TikTok, time to rock. Ecstatic vibes. Says, I can't wait to see what David and Anthony have to say. There's someone who knows that when David Wood and Anthony Rogers go live, something's going down. Namely, Allah. All right, so I put up there, Allah is the greatest idolater ever. And we are going to show that. And actually a lot more. That's kind of the first part of what we're going to take a look at. But we did get some happy Valentine's Day wishes from Stephen Atkins.
Hey, hey. Hey, Stephen.
Bartimaeus. Happy Valentine's Day to all the Muslims in the chat.
Another one of the last few holdouts up there in Canada. Stephen's up there in Canada in Tony's neck of the woods.
Wow, I don't know how they do it. I do not know how they do it. Hey, check this out. Seen this several times already. Anthony's channel. Yeah, just so everyone knows, Anthony had a channel. He still has a channel. There's not a ton of stuff on it. But Anthony was doing blogs and stuff like that, and he had a channel. And anyway, I said, hey, I got a ton of people. Why don't you come work with me and put out some videos with me? And so Anthony's been putting out videos on my channel for the past couple years. But we've been talking about him getting back to his own channel here pretty soon. So in other words, Anthony's more recent stuff, he's got stuff on his channel. His more recent stuff is on my channel, like the stuff we're recording while he's here. That's going to be on my channel. But yeah, probably towards the end of this year, probably after his debate with Shabir, Anthony's going to sort of start posting fresh stuff on his own channel again, because we don't want everything on one channel. You know what I mean? We don't want all the apologetics content on one channel. We want it spread out. And that way, if YouTube starts messing with people, then it's all spread out all over the place. So, how you doing, Anthony?
Yeah, so let me say, if you want to look for that, I don't know anything other than to tell you Anthony Rogers is the channel name. And maybe we can put it in the description box.
Hang on.
Afterwards.
Hey, someone who wait, I guess it would have to be a moderator, since I had to block people from posting links because some Muslims were trying to disrupt every single live stream by posting porn links. Remember that, guys? And so I had to disable people's ability to share links, but I think mods can still do it. So hang on, let me just go ahead and see if I can do it here. Anthony Rogers. Hey, you do have it. It's just called Anthony Rogers. Got your big old stupid looking picture. You look like you weighed an extra 40 pounds here.
Yeah, gosh, I look so much smarter than you.
Hang on.
So I would say that actually all of the great stuff is, well, I mean, I'm not trying to refer to my own stuff as great, but comparatively speaking, the stuff that I've done on David's channel, although some of my equipment stuff has been subpar, a lot of the good content is on your site.
Yep.
But I do have one of the things, and I actually really enjoyed making some of these. One of the things that I did on my site is I made these collages of Muslims, and in some cases I've made it like they're debating one another. So actually, as an example, you might recall this, but in the past I viewed a video by Abu Musab, who's a prominent Muslim preacher over there in Jeddah, over there in Saudi Arabia. And then a local imam here, you know who I'm referring to? Suhaib Webb. So I saw this video by Abu Musab one day, and then completely apart from that, I watched this video by Suhaib Webb, another Muslim, a cleric here, and it sounded to me like they were talking to each other. And so I took the two videos, and I actually think they were talking to each other, but they don't say that. So I took the two videos and I spliced them together and I turned it into like this little debate. And if you look at that, I think it's pretty entertaining. But there was something more than entertainment intended by that. I wanted people to see the nature of some of these disagreements. There, you don't get too much of an idea of what it is they're arguing, but the spirit or the antagonism between the two. And that's a relatively mild example of it. But other things that I have on there include examples of Muslims admitting that Muhammad had a filthy mouth. You know, we're going to talk about Allah swearing here, and of course, in this case, we're talking about Allah binding himself by an oath or what have you. But Muhammad actually had filthy words to use and filthy ideas, and he communicated these things. So I have videos on that. So there's some good stuff there. But for the most part, all of my debates are on your channel. All of my content actually looking at Islam or defending Christianity and so forth.
Yeah, and so Anthony's main problem is that his equipment is all crap. So this year, he's going to keep posting stuff on my channel, and then as the year goes on, we're going to get him all set up with awesome camera, lighting, mic, all that stuff. So right now, basically, Anthony's got great, awesome content. But in order to package that for YouTube, there are some extra things. So we're doing the recording here because I have awesome equipment. But then he's going to focus on editing. He said when they came out with the new edition of iMovie and stuff, he forgot how to use it. And that's just crazy because iMovie is the simplest, easiest program to use. So if he's having problems with that, wow, that's lame. But so anyway, he's going to take the footage here. He's going to focus on doing the editing, getting awesome at the editing. And after that, then we'll get him all the equipment. Then he'll have the equipment. He can practice with that. And then Anthony can just fly away, birdie.
Fly,
free bird, man.
Fly,
I mean, free bird.
Fly. You know what that's from?
Wait, what?
Fly, pelican, fly.
No, what's that?
Scarface, when he's sitting in the spa and he's watching the TV, he sees these pelicans.
I don't remember the pelicans part. I remember the fight at the end.
Oh yeah, of course, that's classic. You got to pick up those little lines in there in between.
I don't know why I was allowed to watch that when I was a little kid, but
who was it that said they watched it at 7? Was that somebody who?
I probably watched it around then.
Yeah.
I remember watching Friday the 13th Part 2 like probably 15 times when I was 6. That was stupid. Anyway, hey, check this out. T. Jordan 14 says, was the Bible corrupted as Muslims and Bart Ehrman claim? Well, what Muslims and Bart Ehrman claim are completely different things. In fact, it's only the ignorance of Muslim fans of Bart Ehrman who think that they're saying the same thing. What's your take on this, Anthony?
Yeah. One thing to be said is what Muslims need is, in terms of corruption, is a message that's altogether different than what we currently have or believe as a result of what we find in the New Testament.
They need massive corruption of doctrine, right? They need there to be somewhere some Bible that doesn't include Jesus' death, his resurrection, his divine nature, he's not the Son of God. That's what they need.
Yeah, so if you look at Bart Ehrman, he would not tell you. In fact, if you pointedly asked him and forced him to actually respond, because he doesn't like actually talking about Islamic issues or things related to Islam, but he'd tell you that no, even when I talk about corruption, I'm not saying that the original document said anything like what we find in Islam. The original documents taught that God is a father, taught that Christ is his son. He even believes the earliest Christians thought that Jesus was God and came to this belief very early, in fact, as a result of his resurrection. So he does not think the New Testament is any friend of Christians, whether corrupted or not. But, and he believes in corruption in a very qualified sense. We may not agree or go as far as Ehrman, but the fact is, Ehrman doesn't get anywhere near, not even light years near Islam.
Yeah, so Ehrman's talking about things like, textual variants and things like that. You have those in the Quran as well. So if that's what Muslims mean by textual corruption, then the Quran is corrupt as well. But if they think that Ehrman is, by saying that there are lots of textual variants and stuff, he's affirming corruption in the sense that that Muslims need. He's just not, and it's just delusion to think otherwise. See, Muslims, think about this. They're told perfect preservation right down to the letter. That's what we have in the Quran. And any change at all, any textual variant, any spelling difference or something like that in the Christian manuscripts, that means corruption. Oh, but Bart Ehrman is saying that. Therefore, he means corruption. Therefore, the Bible has been corrupted. Amen. Oh, my goodness. Bart Ehrman is affirming our view. Wrong. One, there are all kinds of changes to the Quran, missing chapters, large passages were lost, verses were eaten by a sheep. There are textual variants all over the history of the Quran manuscripts. So again, if textual variance is what you mean by corruption, great, the Quran has been corrupted. So either go around saying that the Quran has been corrupted or change your definition of corruption. What we mean by corruption has to involve corruption of doctrine. That's just what you don't have. You don't have that in the Christian manuscripts. But notice what this really tells us about the two religions. You can walk into any Christian bookstore and get a book, multiple books, discussing differences in the manuscripts of the Bible, right? It's a whole field called textual criticism. That's why you have people like Bart Ehrman. We're honest about that, right? We understand if human beings are copying massive, large books, human beings are going to make mistakes. We understand that, right? In Islam, they have the same thing. If you sit down and try to copy the Quran by hand, you're going to make some mistakes at some point. But Muslims say it never happens. They lie. So notice in Islam, and this goes back, we see this going all the way back to the time of Muhammad's companions. The entire basis for Uthman gathering all the Qurans and burning them all was to cover up the differences and to pretend that they're not there. So this is a religion that says, hey, we need unity and we need a false belief. We need to encourage people to falsely believe that no change has ever occurred. Therefore, we're going to lie to everyone. We're going to destroy all the evidence. And this is the religion of the truth, right? No, this is a religion of deception.
Yeah, let me add here, just so everyone is clear on what we mean by textual variance. We're not talking about the Bible being corrupted when we admit that. What we're saying
that's not what we mean.
Yeah, in the process of transcribing something, mistakes are made. Humans are not perfect. If they were, then that would contradict the Bible, right? That would pose a real problem for us. But the fact is, people make mistakes. However, the scriptures are being copied multiple times by multiple different people, which means that when a mistake is made, each scribe is not going to make the same mistake. Happily, we have an embarrassment of riches. We have a plethora of manuscripts spread throughout the world that we're able to then compare and collate and say, hey, look, this guy has it like this here, but these 9 other manuscripts, let's say we have 10 manuscripts in front of us, these 9 other people don't make this same mistake, right? What we're able to do, and then to top it all off, often these mistakes, the vast majority of mistakes, the overwhelming number of transcriptional errors are simply matters of misspelling. And anybody looking at that knows how to spell in Greek can already determine, without having these correct manuscripts, can already determine that's a mistake. The person wrote it wrong. So, but we have multiple manuscripts on top of that, and we're able to say, okay, this guy made a spelling error. Maybe he wasn't the best speller in the bunch, and so we can correct that. So the vast majority of them are spelling issues, and some of them have to do with technical things in Greek that have no bearing on meaning. In other words, I give you a quick example.
You couldn't even translate. It wouldn't even. Yeah. It wouldn't even show up in a translation.
And we don't translate them today. So, for example, in Greek, and it's not even always the case, and scholars still kind of puzzle over this aspect of Greek grammar. But in some cases, when a person's name is mentioned, for example, if it says Jesus went to Jerusalem, in Greek it'll say ha Jesus. It'll use the definite article, and if we translated that, it would literally be the Jesus went to Jerusalem. But that's not a way that we speak in English, and so it doesn't even carry over. And so in some manuscripts, a scribe might have left that out, and another manuscript might have included it. But it doesn't affect anything, right? As I already said, it doesn't affect anything. And so even though scholars are interested in figuring out what the original reading was, and they arrive at that through the science of textual criticism, comparing and collating manuscripts, but at the end of the day, it has no bearing on meaning. It's not like they say, oh gosh, with the definite article, it means Jesus didn't go to Jerusalem, right? It doesn't change anything at all. So,
yep. So, so again, if that's what you mean by corruption, textual variants, spelling differences, things like that, you got the same thing in the Quran. So you got some issues there. Now that's all of that is beside that's apart from the issue of the Quran affirming that no one can change his words. That Christians and Jews still had the gospel and the Torah in the 7th century, which means, guess what? Allah affirms the Torah and the gospel that were available in the 7th century. But guess what? You had tons of textual variants in the manuscripts down to the 7th century, right? So according to the Quran, it's not a problem. According to the Quran, it's not a problem. According to Muslims, it is. But by saying that, they're saying that Allah is wrong. So the Quran, just to be clear, the Quran affirms the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of the Torah and the gospel. So if Muslims want to say, Bart Ehrman is saying corruption and we're going to give that an Islamic meaning and assume that he means massive corruption of doctrine, which he would never say in a million years, yay! He agrees with us. Well, if he meant that and you agreed with him, then you'd be saying that Allah has no clue what he's talking about, that the Quran is wrong and that Muhammad's a false prophet. So by all means, say the Bible's been corrupted, and we will thank you for admitting that Islam is false. Matt Hedges said, have you ever been nervous for one of your debates? The only debate I was ever remotely nervous at was my first debate with Shabir. I've had 9 debates with Shabir, but my first debate with Shabir, he'd been sort of built up for so many years in my mind as the greatest Muslim debater that my hand doesn't shake, right? Like there could be 10 people around me like smashing my face in stuff. My hand doesn't start shaking with nerves. And so it was really weird that I'm sitting down and I look and I could feel my hand just a little tremble in my hand when I was sitting down for my first debate with Shabir. So yeah, that was the first time. That was the only time I've done like probably 60 some debates, and yeah, that was the one I got a slight feeling of nervousness about. And then we debated, and then we did 3 more right after that, and so felt fine. All right, so we have a topic. Anthony.
Yes.
What do you think about Allah? How can we say that Allah is actually an idolater or a mushrik or someone who commits shirk or someone who associates partners? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so first of all, everybody should remember the Muslim claim, and this is the central or chief article of Islam. This is that doctrine that they would give the greatest priority to and say that everything else hinges upon or follows from this doctrine, namely that Allah is one. And when they say that Allah is one, it means, among other things, that there are no other gods besides Allah. To have another god besides Allah is to commit the sin of shirk, which means the sin of association, or ascribing an associate or a partner to Allah. So, according to Muslims, this is their chief article, and this is also the doctrine that if a person violates, and there's a lot of ways a person can violate this, and they break these into major and minor sins. At least with respect to major sins, anyone who commits that sin and dies upon it will go to hell forever. Now, here, it's also relevant to point out for people that according to Muslims, everyone's going to hell, right? Even Muslims are going to hell, except for a handful of people that were guaranteed paradise, who even still feared that they might be going to hell, even in, though Allah promised them that they wouldn't. In any case, so the Quran says almost everyone's going to hell. The only people that aren't going to get out of it are those who committed the major sin of shirk and weren't Muslims, right? Non-Muslims won't be forgiven for any sins because they were mushriks. They were guilty of associating partners. So in the hadith literature, for example, Muhammad gives us an example of something that's forbidden because to do otherwise is an example of shirk. Right, and here's so this is a hadith. This is multiply attested. It's found in Bukhari. It's found in Sahih Muslim. It's found in Sunan Abi Dawud. It's found in multiple places. So this isn't contested. It's a Sahih narration. But it says, narrated Ibn Umar, the Prophet said, if anyone has to take an oath, he should swear only by Allah. The people of Quraysh, so he's referring now to the idolaters according to the Quran. These are the people that are repeatedly referred to as polytheists and idolaters. He says, the people of Quraysh used to swear by their fathers, but the prophet said, do not swear by your fathers. So keep both of those things in mind. Positively, Muhammad said you're to swear by Allah. In fact, he says by Allah alone. But then negatively, he says you can't swear by your fathers. Later, in another hadith, this is found in Sunan Ibn Majah, Volume 3, Book 11, number 2095, says, it was narrated from Abdur Rahman bin Samura that the Messenger of Allah said, do not take oaths by idols, nor by your fathers. Now, I know you're putting this question to me, but maybe at this point you want to interject, or at least chime in on the fact that does Muhammad in the Quran show anybody violating this stricture?
I can think of one person who does it.
How does he do it? Flagrantly? Does he do it?
He does it more than anyone else in all of history.
Right. So here, David's referring to Allah. Right. If you look in the Quran, in fact, David has a video on this, and that's why I kind of was, trying to get him to chime in there a little more. He's got a whole video on this that's actually awesome. It was one of his earlier videos. Hopefully one day when he remakes some of his videos, he remakes that one, because it really is. It's a classic, but if you listen to the audio, it's not as great as some of the contemporary stuff.
Yeah, that was old. That was when I had garbage equipment like Anthony has now.
Well, so let me read. This is actually, so this is from Surah 74, verses 32 through 34. So this is just 3 verses, and notice this is Allah speaking, right? Allah speaks directly according to Muslims in the Quran. It says, nay, I swear by the moon, so this is Allah, I swear by the moon and by the night as it retreats and by the dawn as it shines forth. So here's Allah in the space of 3 verses swearing by the moon, by the night, and by the dawn. And that's just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. I've got at least 15 to 20 other passages right in front of me that I'm not going to bore you with right now. The fact is that Allah had a penchant in the Quran for swearing by created things, even though Muhammad in the Hadith tells his followers not to swear by created things, only to swear by Allah, and not to be like the Quraysh, the idolaters who swear by other things, like their fathers, like their idols. And so apparently there's some sort of disjunct here between Allah and Muhammad. Now here, what people might not know is that Muhammad didn't actually originally hold this teaching, right? Muhammad didn't originally teach his followers that you can't swear by created things. That's why he has Allah in the Quran swearing by created things. It wasn't until a Jewish person came along and told Muhammad that he was guilty of the sin of shirk. Right?
Hey, by the way, since you talked about that video, should we try watching a clip?
Oh yeah, if you could put it on.
I want to see if we have the technology to pull this up here.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and see here. I believe we can hear it if I turn my volume on here. All right, guys, we're gonna see here. We're gonna. I didn't have the volume set up and stuff like that to watch what's on the screen here, but we will try.
You need that section where you're just ticking off all.
I think
things.
that's about to start. I don't know exactly because I can't listen to it to find out exactly where it is, but I think it's about to start here. So I believe I have the technology to share my screen.
We have the technology.
There we have it. There we have it. See that? And I think if I play it, people can hear it. So let's see if this works.
Now that we understand how shirk works, let's have some fun, shall we? In the Quran, Allah swears
Is that working?
over and over again by the Quran.
Where's the audio?
Surah 38,
Guys, is that working? Do you hear it?
I swear by the Quran, full of wisdom. 38:1, I swear by the Quran, full of admonition. 43:2, I swear by the book that makes things clear. 51, I swear.
Let me see. Guys, is the audio on? Oh, volume very low. Okay, hang on. All right, let's try this now.
Hmm.
How's that?
Hey, that's the guy that talked about.
Wait, people said no audio. Dang it! What happened? What did I do? Okay, it's working when I do that, but when I click play, the audio goes off. Okay, we're gonna give that up. All right, you guys can go check that. I have to figure out the technology here. I'm not used to playing video clips like that. I'm used to downloading them and then replaying them. All right. Well, Anthony messed that one up. Oh wait. Okay. Yeah. There are controls here for doing stuff. All right. I don't want to learn this while we're watching live, so we'll figure that one out later.
Hmm.
All right. Well, Anthony botched that one.
I botched that one. I let David man the helm.
We tried it.
We
We
have
tried
the
it.
technology. We just don't have the right technician.
Yeah, we have the technology. We just don't know how to use it right now.
Uh, okay. So let's recap real quick. So Muhammad in the Hadith says that it's shirk. It's a violation of Tawheed, Islam's chief article, to swear by created things. So he orders his followers only to swear by Allah and forbids them from swearing by their fathers or by idols or anything else, right? There are numerous hadith that condemn swearing by anything other than Allah. There's a hadith, for example, where Umar forbids swearing by the Kaaba because Muhammad had ordered that people not swear by created things. So he said, swear by the Lord of the Kaaba, for example. So Muhammad actually condemned this. However, there's a problem here because in the Quran, we see Allah apparently at odds with Muhammad on this particular matter, right? What's interesting is we actually have evidence that Muhammad himself used to swear by created things. So, for example, this is from
Whoa,
Sunan.
whoa. Hang on. Just make sure here. We have audio, right? It says we have audio. Just making sure. I'm looking at the comments, but I think these are from back when we were watching the video. I just wanted to make sure. Everyone can hear me, right? Everyone can hear us? This all true? Okay. Tony says good audio. All right. We're good. All right, continue.
Okay, so Sunan Ibn Majah, this is volume 3, book 22, number 2706. It was narrated that Abu Hurairah said, a man came to the Prophet and said, O messenger of Allah, tell me which of the people has most right to my good companionship. Muhammad said, yes, I swear by your father, you will certainly be told. And then he goes on in the hadith to say that your mother has the best right of your companionship. Later in the same hadith, he also swears by Allah. So apparently, Muhammad thinks it's appropriate at this point. And notice, he's a prophet at this point in the Islamic conception of him. He's a prophet. He says he swears by your father, and he thinks this is appropriate. So nobody can say this is before Muhammad was a prophet or anything like that. And this is in Sunan Ibn Majah. There's no question about the authenticity of this hadith based on the criteria that Muslims use to establish authenticity. And so there's a problem here. How do we account for the fact that Muhammad at one point condemns the idea of swearing in the name of anyone other than Allah, and yet in the Quran and Muhammad himself in the hadith, we find Allah and Muhammad, his chief prophet, swearing by other things? Well, the explanation for that, and I already tipped my hand here, the explanation for that comes from Sunan and Nisai. This is volume 4, book 35, number 3804. Now pay attention carefully. It was narrated from Abdullah bin Yasar from Katala, a woman from Juhayna, that a Jew came to the Prophet and said, "You are setting up rivals to Allah and associating others with him." Okay, so what this person is accusing Muhammad of is the sin of shirk. He's saying you're setting up rivals to Allah and you're associating others with him. You say, now he's going to explain how Muhammad and his followers are doing that. You say, whatever Allah wills and you will. In other words, this person, whoever says this, Allah wills this and you will this, they're joining somebody with Allah when they talk this way, because they're suggesting that this event happening is contingent upon the will of Allah and the will of Muhammad. Okay? But then he goes on. There's more to this. He says, you commit shirk by saying whatever Allah wills and you will, and you say, by the Kaaba, or I swear by the Kaaba. So the Prophet, this is how Muhammad then responds to this. So the Prophet commanded them, if they wanted to swear an oath, to say by the Lord of the Kaaba, and to say whatever Allah wills, then what you will. In other words, this person's will is subordinate to the will of Allah. Allah's will is ultimate. This person's will is subordinate to it and contingent upon Allah's will. So there are two ways the early Muslims used to commit shirk, according to this Jew. It was by swearing by other things besides Allah and joining Muhammad to Allah in the expression of his will, saying it was contingent equally upon Allah's will and Muhammad's will. Subsequent to that, Muhammad then forbids this. So this accounts for why Allah in the Quran swears by created things, and why Muhammad and his followers also swore by created things. But now this creates a problem, right? It's one thing now for Muhammad to come along and say, okay, from this day forward, we're not going to swear in the name of created things. That's one thing. But he's got this other problem on his hand, namely that in the Quran, Allah has done this repeatedly. Right? So when you think about it, this is actually interesting. We've talked about an aspect of what I'm thinking about here before. One of the things that's always just sort of I've marveled at when I look at Muhammad and I've tried to put together, Muhammad had certain ways of trying to clean up messes after the fact, right? For example, when Muhammad would violate one of his own laws, ordinarily what would happen is he would get a convenient revelation, right? Allah would come to the rescue and say, oh, by the way, people, I forgot to tell you, this law that I gave you doesn't apply to Muhammad. Muhammad gets special perks. He gets the perks of prophethood. However, so when you realize that, and then you look at another scenario, right? Muhammad does this 3, 4, 5 times. You get used to that pattern, and you start looking at the sources, and then you see Muhammad violate one of Allah's commands again, and you think, okay, it's about to come. There's about to be a new revelation from Allah saying, oh no, special perks for Muhammad. But then all of a sudden, Muhammad does a 180. He departs from his normal thing. It's not that Allah doesn't get him out of it, but the way Allah gets him out of it, it has changed. And I just scratch my head and I think there's something here, right? And so here, let me give an example of this. This is something that David's done a series on, or that he's used in part of his series on the psychology of Muhammad. Okay. In the past, when Muhammad would break a law, he would get a special revelation from Allah saying, you have a special exemption. But in a particular affair, Allah didn't do that. And here I'm referring to the affair where he takes the wife of his adopted son. And I don't know if you want to pick up here, because this is more of a specialty to you. But basically what happens is his adopted son, Zayd, has a wife named Zainab, and it becomes apparent that Muhammad has lustful desires for her. So Zayd, in response to that, knowing that Muhammad is the prophet of Allah, and basically that Allah caters to Muhammad's wishes, Zayd divorces Zainab And then Muhammad, again, he's expressing his desire for her, ultimately marries her. And this leads to an uproar among the Arabs. Even Muhammad's companions are put out by this. This is an atrocity because he's not only taken a woman from one of his followers, and it seems as though his lust for her leads to the divorce to begin with, but it's the wife of his adopted son. And this is prohibited. Not only
Prohibited by everyone in history.
yeah, yeah. Even the Muslims don't think this is appropriate, right? Well, here Allah comes to the rescue, but he doesn't say no special perks for you, Muhammad. What Allah says is, let's get rid of that whole adoption thing, right? Let's outlaw adoption. So that's why when you look in the Islamic world, there's no such thing as adoption.
Yeah.
Adoption does not exist in the Islamic world because when you think about it, ultimately it goes back to the fact that Muhammad wanted the wife of his adopted son. So instead of Allah just saying, special perks for you, you as my prophet can take the wife of your adopted son, but nobody else can, he opens the door for everybody now to take the wife of their son. Really, in principle, that's what's happened here. And you think about it, why in the world is this so different than these other scenarios? And the explanation for that can be found by watching David's videos on the psychology of Islam, where what you find out is Muhammad, this is among other things, right? They should really go back and watch your video where you lay this all out. But ultimately, when Muhammad's choosing things, when he's sifting through things to accept or reject in terms of the prior paganism or Judaism or Christianity, it's being filtered through all sorts of things, including Muhammad's background, his upbringing. In Muhammad's background, you find out that his father died before Muhammad was born. Right? Muhammad never knew his father. By the time, so he's living with
family of Bedouins.
Yeah, he's actually being cared for by a wet nurse, and this ties in with other things. But
they give him back because they think he was demon possessed.
Right.
They give him back to his mom. Then
Yeah.
his mom dies a year and a half later. And then he's given to his grandfather. His grandfather dies. So by the time he's 8, every single close relationship Muhammad has had is gone.
Right.
Gone.
And so now you think about this. Here's Muhammad. All the significant male characters, especially in his life, have died. And he grows up in a pagan context, which you can tell especially irked Muhammad, where the pagans attribute to Allah offspring, but in particular, female offspring. You find Muhammad repeatedly complaining in the Quran, what? To you the males, to him the females? Allah doesn't like the idea that Allah has offspring, but they're reduced to or exclusively females. Right? That really bothers Muhammad in the Quran. And in fact, the whole idea of Allah as a father bothers Muhammad. So Muhammad gets rid of the whole idea of the fatherhood of God, which you find in Judaism and Christianity.
And in conjunction with that, the abolition of adoption, right? It's
right.
like, I mean, just think about that. Guys, I was an orphan. I didn't have a father. I didn't ever get a father. I just never had a father. If I don't get a father, you obviously don't get a father. And God isn't our father. No father for you. No father for you, people. That's the message of Islam, right? Wow.
Yeah.
Wild stuff.
So there's a problem here, right? Muhammad can't just get rid of these verses in the Quran. In fact, this brings up another issue. In other cases, when Muhammad blew it in the Quran, he always had the abrogation card.
Yep.
Right? There's the famous satanic verses where Muhammad said something. Later, he gets rebuked by his followers because it's another example of shirk, right? Muhammad says that these pagan daughters, these goddesses, can intercede with Allah, and he's doing that because he wants the pagan Meccans to accept him. He's so desirous, and this is even in the Sirah literature, he's so desirous for the pagans to accept him that he ultimately begins uttering words from Satan that countenances belief in these goddess daughters and their ability to intercede with Allah. And so these become the famous incident known as the Satanic Verses. And when Muhammad gets upbraided by his followers, he realizes the colossal mistake he's made. He's just gone back on everything that gave him his claim to fame. He claimed to be a prophet of the one true God and to be doing away with the paganism that had encroached upon the originally pure religion of Abraham that was introduced into Arabia by Abraham and his son Ishmael. Right? He's restoring all of that, and now, after having proclaimed that message, he's done he's capitulated back to it. So he gets upbraided by his followers, and then he comes up with the convenient excuse that Satan cast those words on my tongue when I was reciting, but now Allah has apprised me of my error and has abrogated those verses. Okay, so this is where you get the doctrine of abrogation in Islam. Allah has abrogated those verses and replaced them with better ones, right? Now, can Muhammad do that very easily on this occasion when it comes to Allah swearing?
No, because it's all over the place.
Right.
It's all over the Quran. You'd have to abrogate, yeah.
Yeah, in the case of the Satanic Verses, it's a couple of verses. Even though the excuse isn't valid, right? The excuse completely blows the lid off of the Islamic religion, right? Muhammad's admitting that he spoke for Satan when pretending to be speaking for Allah. And if he couldn't tell the difference in that occasion when he was speaking for Satan or when he was speaking for Allah, then all sorts of dominoes begin to fall. The domino that Muhammad could tell the difference between Allah and Satan, the domino that Muhammad was speaking words that were so eloquent that nobody could possibly imitate them, not even the jinn, like Satan, right? Satan's supposed to be a jinn. Well, here's Satan supposedly giving revelation that Muhammad can't distinguish between what Allah says and what Satan says. So just all sorts of dominoes begin to fall. But he can't do that in the case of Allah swearing because it's found over and over and over and over again in the Quran. He'd have to start doing, like a scissor. What was it? Was it Ben Franklin who had his own little Bible where he was cutting out all the verses he didn't like?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. So Muhammad would have had to have done a serious, cut and paste job here. So that's not available to him. So instead of saying these verses were abrogated, and the other thing to remember here is you can't, how do you abrogate the statement that Allah did something? Right? It's one thing to say Allah has changed his mind about alcohol. You can't drink anymore.
Yeah, the idea of supposedly abrogation applies to commands.
Right.
You're commanded to do one thing, and now you can be commanded to do something else.
Right. So what happens is what Muslims end up saying is, in the case of Allah, it's not shirk, right?
Yeah.
Allah can, they don't even necessarily say it's not shirk. They say that Allah basically can do it. I mean, but they do want to say it's not shirk at the end of the day. So the excuse then is Allah can do this, but Muslims can't. Now there's all sorts of problems there.
If you say, so here it is in a nutshell. According to Islam, if you say, I swear by the moon, you've just associated the moon as a partner with Allah by swearing by it. Since you swore by it, you're deifying it, and then you've just made a god out of the moon. But as I show in that video we were talking about, Allah swears by everything. He swears by literally everything that exists. He names all kinds of specific things, but then he even says, I swear by the seen and the unseen. Well, guess what? There's only two kinds of things, seen and unseen, right? So if he swears by the seen and the unseen, that's everything, which means that Allah swears by everything. It means he is sworn by more things than anyone else could ever swear by. But yeah, as Anthony pointed out, the Muslims want to say, okay, yes, if a human being swears by something else, he's just associated it as a partner with Allah. But if Allah does it, if Allah swears by everything, he hasn't associated any of this as a partner with him. And you're saying you see some problems with that?
Oh yeah. So you have this, you have a video where you go into that in detail and point out the inconsistency of saying Allah can do this. Now, of course, it's inconsistent, fundamentally inconsistent with everything that had come before, right? Muhammad
Mm-hmm.
claims that he's confirming what had come before in the Torah, in the Zabur, the Psalms of David, in the Injil, the gospel given to Jesus, the revelation given to Jews and Christians. Now, this disagrees with everything that you find in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. That's why this Jewish person knew to come up to Muhammad and say, you're committing shirk by doing this, right? Because in the Old Testament, for example, this is just one example, when God swears in Genesis 22, and this is not just an example of swearing in the Bible, it's an instance of God swearing, so it shows you how God swears according to the Bible. In Genesis 22, he says, I swear by myself, says the Lord. So God swears by himself in the Bible. If you look at Hebrews chapter 6, so now we're talking about a New Testament passage. It refers back to that, and there's actually numerous other instances in the Old Testament where God swears by himself. The author of Hebrews says, because God wants to show the certainty of something,
Mm-hmm.
right? He does, already the fact that God is promising renders it certain. God can't lie. But God binds himself with an oath, and it says, because there's no one greater by whom he could swear, he swore by himself. And this is ultimately what confirms God's promise, namely the promise that God made to Abraham on that occasion when he swore by himself. But notice the principle. The reason God swears by himself is because you swear by that which is greater. Remember Jesus in Matthew 5 when he's condemning the practice of swearing by created things?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, he's condemning those who swear by the hairs on their head. And he says, you can't change anything about the hair on your head. You have, there's just, and he also makes the comparison of lesser and greater things. He says, obviously, God is greater than the temple, so you swear by God, not the temple. So there's all these factors that tie into why you're not supposed to swear by anything other than God. God alone can vouchsafe the truth of what you're testifying to and hold a person accountable if they lie or vindicate them in the case that they are telling the truth. So God is the ultimate source, vouchsafing the truth of what a person swears by. This is why a person can't swear by something other than God, and this is why God doesn't swear by anything other than himself. And this is why a Jew had to tell Muhammad and apparently Allah, because Allah doesn't know that this is wrong until Muhammad knows this is wrong. Right? You notice that in terms of the story, Muhammad is apprised by a Jew of the fact that it's wrong to swear this way. And so it's not until after that Muhammad, remember, according to Muslim belief, these commands come from Allah. So if Muhammad doesn't condemn it until after a Jewish person tells him, then it's not until after Muhammad hears this from a Jewish person that Allah outlaws this. So Muhammad is one step behind the Jews, and Allah is one step behind Muhammad in this whole scenario. So where does that leave us? According to Muhammad's eventual position, you can't swear by anything, but Allah can do this, even though it's contrary to the previous scriptures. It's contrary to the Old Testament. It's contrary to the New Testament. Now you, I think, blow the lid off of the excuse that Allah can swear by created things in your video. But what I want to point out in particular, this is what we've been sort of working towards, is it even the case that Muslims only swear by Allah, given their theology? Now, yesterday, we talked about the fact that although you would assume that Islam believes there's only one eternal reality, namely Allah, the fact of the matter is, according to the Islamic sources, Allah is not the only eternal reality. Among other eternal realities is the Quran. The Quran is viewed as Allah's eternal speech. It's literally viewed as coexistent with Allah. And yet, at the same time, it's not Allah. Right? I debated a Muslim many years ago, and one of the things he kept saying that I used against him in the debate, it was a debate on whether or not Muhammad was a true prophet. And I said Muhammad wasn't a true prophet because he contradicted the message of monotheism brought in the previous scriptures. And of course, they think that's one of the greatest proofs of Muhammad's prophethood, that he brought monotheism. And I said, no, he didn't. And throughout the course of the debate, he kept referring to the Quran as something other than Allah. And I said, well, if the Quran is eternal and it's other than Allah, then you've got two eternal realities, right? Well, if you have two eternal realities and you're not supposed to swear by any created things, then doesn't it seem to logically follow that you can swear by the Quran?
Mm-hmm.
It does, doesn't it?
Yep.
Right? And I wish you could play a clip. You don't think you can play a clip?
We just tried playing a clip. You have, you have to give me the clip ahead of time.
Yeah,
we're
you
gonna
blew
play
it.
a clip.
You blew it. I forgot.
One of us blew it.
I forgot. The technician didn't know how to use the technology. Well,
Anthony shows up and, hey, can you figure out how to play a bunch of clips that you don't even have and just do it while we're going live instead of me giving them to you 5 minutes beforehand?
So anyways, I have a clip of Yasser Qadi as just one example. Here's what Yasser Qadi says in the clip. He says the Quran has attributes of divinity in it. It shares in the attributes of Allah. Right? Think about it. The Quran is eternal because it's Allah's attribute of speech. But it's not only eternal, you already referred earlier to the fact that the word of Allah can't change. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means the Quran is immutable. So if the Quran is eternal and immutable, it can't change, then the next question becomes, is the Quran contingent? Right? If it's contingent, then it could change, except its ability to change would be contingent upon. I mean, how do you have an eternal thing that's eternally contingent? Maybe somebody would try and argue that you can have something that's eternal and contingent, but at least prima facie, that's just not plausible. If it's a contingent thing, if it's a dependent thing, then it's not ultimate, it's not absolute, in which case it's not eternal. And I think you can make a more sophisticated argument, but even to say that the Quran is eternal and immutable then seems to presuppose that it's not contingent. And what are those if they're not attributes of divinity?
Mm-hmm.
And I could easily go down the line listing things that the Quran says about itself, or that Allah allegedly says about the Quran, such as the Quran is inimitable, the Quran is perfect, right? The Quran surpasses anything that you can find in creation. The Quran is greater than anything that any man or jinn could produce. Okay, so the Quran's perfection is asserted in the Quran. On and on we could go through the list. But I have a quote from Yasser Qadi. He's one of many. Yasser Qadi admitting the Quran has attributes of divinity in it. This is why, for example, a Muslim can't touch the Quran unless they're ritually pure, right? They have to go through their little purification rituals. This is why a Muslim would be aghast if the Quran is thrown on the floor. This is why a woman is not supposed to touch the Quran in a state of, if she's in menses, when she's going through, a period of menstruation. This is why, on and on, I could go talking about how Muslims treat the Quran not just as an, book and ink, paper and ink, and I'm not just talking about a person having, treating a book well, or even having respect for how they treat the Bible because its contents contain God's revelation. They're treating the Quran as though it were something more than just something that's holy. It's something that bears the very attributes of Allah, at least in the sense of its recitation, right? It's immutable, it's eternal, it's non-contingent, it's perfect, and on we could go. Because of that, many Muslims say that in fact, this is the standard, this is the orthodox position in Islam, that you can actually swear by the Quran. That's what Yasser Qadi is actually building up to in that clip that I wanted to play, which I'll put in my video, by the way, where you have Yasser Qadi saying that you can swear by the Quran because the Quran is not a created thing. Now let me just give you part of the rationale for that, because many people are going to wonder, well, okay, but is there something from Muhammad regarding this? Oh,
there you go.
Yeah. So in the first place, the Quran says not only that you can't swear by created things, it says that you can only take refuge in Allah. And that's part of the rationale for why you can only swear by him. You're to take refuge in Allah alone. Only Allah can guarantee the outcome of what you swear by. Only Allah can be a source of protection and safety and so forth. Well, listen to what Muhammad says then in light of that in the hadith. This is found in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abi Dawud, Jamiat Tirmidhi, Sunan Ibn Majah. It's found all over the hadith material. It says, Kala bint Akim Sulamiya reported, I heard Allah's messenger is saying, when any one of you stays at a place, he should say, I seek refuge in the Quran, or the perfect word of Allah, from the evil of what he created. By the way, you notice that? I seek refuge in the perfect word of Allah, or the Quran, from the evil of what you have created. So he's seeking refuge in the Quran because of the evil that Allah is somehow responsible for. He goes on later in the hadith, and it says he's talking about a person who some harm came to him, and then Muhammad says, had you recited these words in the evening, I seek refuge in the Quran from the evil of what he created, it would not have done any harm to you. So Muhammad in the Quran says you can't seek refuge in anything other than Allah, and that's because to do otherwise is shirk, and this is the same basis upon which you're not supposed to swear by anything other than Allah. Muhammad says that you can seek refuge in the Quran, and this is why Muslims say, well, then you can also swear by the Quran. But now remember the problem. Now, by the way, I don't know if you saw this. We went through this in painstaking detail yesterday about how the Quran is viewed as something other than Allah, and yet it's eternal, and how that then violates Islamic Tawheed, the idea that Allah is absolutely one. And somebody in the comment section, I'm thinking, what video did they listen to? They said, I don't get the problem. Tawheed is supposed to be that Allah is absolutely one, and here are Muslims saying, no, there's a fundamental diversity in eternity. There's Allah, and as something other than him, his eternal attribute of speech, namely the Quran. In fact, by the way, just think about how absurd it would be for a Muslim to try and say the Quran is Allah. One of the things that we're told in the Islamic sources is that the Quran, as it exists in heaven, as the eternal exemplar from which the Quran descends, it's called the preserved tablet. Right? So if you say the Quran and Allah are the same thing, you're saying Allah is equivalent to the preserved tablet. Right? That makes Allah a tablet. And by the way, if he's the preserved tablet, who's preserving Allah? Right? This means Allah now is a preserved tablet. It would also mean the Quran, fundamentally, this is what Muslims tell us, it's a recitation. Right? So is Allah a recitation? Right? When a person, when the Quran is made up of parts, it's got 114 surahs. Is Allah made up of parts? If Allah is made up of parts, is he absolutely one? You cannot say that the Quran is Allah without 100 absurdities following, right? So Muslims know to say the Quran is not Allah. The Quran is not Allah. But as soon as you say it's not Allah and you say it's eternal, you're saying there are two eternal realities. That is not Tawheed. That is not monotheism. That's not Judaism. That's not Christianity. What that is paganism. It's pagan to the core. And you further compound the problem when you start saying you can seek refuge in this other thing besides Allah. You can call upon this thing as your intercessor, which we saw the other day is taught in the Islamic sources, and you can swear by this thing. This thing is starting to sound like a second deity.
If we were to say anything like that, they would accuse us of paganism, right? Because when we do, when we say that Jesus is the divine word or something like that, they say, oh, nope, that's polytheism, right? So, but you have it as the Quran there, especially when you combine it with the Quran appears as a pale man, right? So you have his eternal speech, Allah's eternal speech, which is co-eternal with him, is distinct from him, and according to Muhammad himself, if you swear by anything other than Allah, then you've associated it as a partner with Allah. And so if you're allowed to swear by the Quran, that means that you are associating the Quran as a partner with Allah. And when you combine this with the fact that it appears as a pale man, you've got this other pale man that you've got this pale man that you can swear by. And again, if we were to say anything like that, Muslims say, oh, that's paganism, that's polytheism, and so on. But for some reason, it's gosh, guys, that's why I'm not even trying to get involved here, right? It's so silly. It's so silly, right? It's like Islam says, oh, look at all this pagan stuff. Let's combine all this pagan stuff into one religion and just say over and over again, pure monotheism. And then for 14 centuries, if anyone disagrees, we'll chop their heads off so that everyone will simply mindlessly agree with us when we say it's pure monotheism. And then we get down to our age where you can say it. You can say, hey, this is a bunch of pagan nonsense.
We're going to need to respond to that. Let me underscore something here. I want to make sure people caught this. When Christians say, because there is an apparent similarity here, certainly what the Quran thinks it's condemning as Christian orthodoxy, what the Quran thinks it's condemning, it's not what we actually believe when we actually get into the details of it, but it is equivalent to what Muhammad ends up asserting, right? Muhammad thinks that what we've done is we've taken something other than God and we've elevated it to the level of deity.
Yeah.
We've made Jesus out to be a God, okay? That isn't the Christian position. As Christians, we believe that the Son is eternally of the same essence as the Father. If you want to, so here, you know the mistake that Muslims usually make when they say you Christians believe 1 + 1 + 1 is 1.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're usually misapplying that to the Christian. When we say the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, we're referring to 3 persons. 1 + 1 + 1 is 3.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're asking a question,
they don't include the units, right?
Yeah,
1 person plus 1 person plus 1 person plus 1
right.
person, right?
But if you're asking about the essence of the Father, the essence of the Son, the essence of the Spirit, or the being of the Father, the being of the Son, the being of the Spirit, it's the same being, the same essence. Father, Son, and Spirit are numerically identical to the divine essence, although personally distinct. Father, Son, and Spirit don't represent separate essences. They represent the same fundamental being who exists in a tri-personal way. That is not what the Quran condemns. What the Quran condemns is this idea that you have 2 separate realities that are somehow, associated with each other. But what does the Quran teach? What do the Islamic sources teach about Allah and the Quran? Do they teach that the Quran is fundamentally one with Allah's essence? No, I just went over that. The Quran is something Allah sent down. The Quran is something that's recited. The Quran is identified with the preserved tablet. None of that can be said with Allah. Allah's not the preserved tablet. Allah can't be reduced to a recitation. So the Quran is fundamentally other than Allah. Even if you say it's of the attributes, right? It's distinct from Allah according to Muslim theology and according to the teaching of the Quran and the Islamic sources. And so what that means is Islam is guilty of the very thing that it condemns others for wrongly. Right? I mean, it's incredible. Muhammad has gotten away with just this colossal, crime here. Where he's a cosmic criminal, really, for attributing to God a partner. But he's the slickness of it is that he's been able to deceive over 1 billion people into thinking that's not what he's teaching. Right? I mean, but they believe it too at the same time. They believe the Quran's eternal, but they just won't put 1 and 1 together.
Yeah.
Right? Say not 2, Muslims, Allah and the Quran.
Yeah. Matter of fact, that's a good title of a video. You got to spot good video title. Say not 2, right?
Yeah.
And then you put that in there. I've also been wanting to make a video. I don't know I don't know how much you could fit into a thumbnail and actually be have people able to read it because, people see thumbnails and it's small and then it's on a phone, so it's really small. But I wanted to have 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 all the way up to 100, all the way up to 114 ones equals 1 in Islam. Because, Muslims make fun of, 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1. Oh, so dumb, because we don't include what we're talking about there and have no idea what Christians are even saying. But it would apply. It would apply to Islam because the Quran appears as a pale man. The Quran appears as a pale man to intercede for you. But Muhammad also said that individual chapters of the Quran appear as flocks of birds that speak on your behalf and testify and intercede for you and so on. So notice, you've got 114 flocks of birds. They all have their own memories and, communication ability and things like that. They talk. But you have 114 of them, and yet they all add up to one man. So you have 114 persons who add up to one person, right? Now notice, all of that is according to Muhammad. That's not according to me. That's not according to Anthony. That's according to Muhammad. So basically, what Muslims are saying is their entire theology of the Quran is just absolute nonsense, and Muhammad's a false prophet for proclaiming that. Why don't Muslims see the problem here? Because they don't know it, right? They don't know it. Their leaders don't tell them about this. It's all right there in their most trusted sources, and that's why it falls to us to go ahead and point these things out. But did y'all catch that? Each chapter of the Quran at the judgment will appear as a flock of birds. Apparently, he doesn't say this, but apparently it's a flock of birds because probably the individual verses are individual birds. And so each chapter of the Quran shows up as a flock of the birds that are in there. But each flock will be able to intercede for you. So notice that's 114 different sort of witnesses there, and yet the Quran also appears as a specific pale man.
And says, I was your companion.
You guys are making fun of the doctrine of the Trinity. You're saying the doctrine of the Trinity is irrational and proves that Christianity is false. Why don't you answer this? Because you never hear this, right? Your leaders don't talk to you about this stuff. You got to hear it from people like Anthony or people like Sam Shamoun or people like me.
Now, let me make a connection here in case I don't know how many people will know this. Earlier, we were talking about the belief of the pagans that Allah had these daughters that the pagans thought of as his daughters who were deities and had the power of intercession.
And they're the birds.
They're the birds.
So yeah.
They were called the Geranique.
Yeah, the cranes. Yeah, the cranes. Guys, think about this. This is extremely important, right? Because yesterday we were talking about what Muhammad actually did, right? Muhammad comes along and he says, because even according to the Quran, the pagans acknowledged Allah as the supreme God. They believed in these other goddesses and so on as intermediaries, intercessors, right? They would take your prayers up to Allah. So you have all these things that are standing in between you and Allah. And Muhammad comes along and says, no, that's all paganism. And Muslims agree and they say, yes, that's paganism to have all these intercessors between you and Allah. And they say that's paganism, that's polytheism. You're deifying all these things by putting them in between you and Allah. And so we need to get rid of all that stuff. And then what do they say? Oh, now we have all these other intercessors. But Anthony, I know you're pointing this out because we know this, but think about it. In the story of the satanic verses, the daughters of Allah, Alat, Alusa, and Manat, these three pagan goddesses, they're called the exalted cranes. They're the birds, right? Because the idea is you're here, Allah's way up there. And so when you pray, the birds will hear it and they'll carry your prayers up to Allah and they'll say, oh, Allah, you need to listen to what this person's saying here. And Muslims say, yes, that's paganism. That's horrible. That's polytheism. That's shirk. That's idolatry. You can't do that. What a sick, twisted religion. And what does Muhammad do with the Quran?
It'll come like a flock of birds, people.
The Quran, think about this, right? Anthony's already shown that the Quran is associated as a partner with Allah, even though it's not Allah. So there's Allah, then there's the Quran. Say not to, right? And it's funny because they won't.
Desist, it would be better for you.
Yes, I mean, it's just amazing because it's clearly there are two. There's clearly two things there. There are clearly and indisputable two things that are both, that you have deified them both, but you won't say it, right? Because you can't, as Anthony said, you can't put one and one together. But then, as if that weren't enough, what are these individual chapters of the Quran? They're birds who intercede for you. Do you see it, guys? Do you see it? Don't believe in Allah, Alusa, and Manat, those pagan birds who intercede for you. Believe in the Quran. these 114 flocks of birds who will intercede for you. The Quran's so much better. We got so many more birds than those 3 birds. You just got 3 birds over there. Now you have 114 entire flocks. Paganism over there, but not when we do it. Even though the Quran is deified, and even though the Quran is deified and appears as a pale man, and somehow that pale man is comprised of 114 flocks of birds, each one of which has its own intelligence. Guys, but this isn't paganism. This is just pure monotheism here. This is amazing stuff, man. This is amazing. This is a wild religion here.
And it just seems like, you know, one of the things I've trained myself to do is never think I've gotten to the end of something, right? And with Islam, it just keeps proving that that's a good principle to work with, because I get somewhere and I think, oh my goodness, I had no clue. And then I get further and I'm like, I thought I had, I finally, you know, you feel like this should be the end, but it isn't, right? It never is. There, you know, you always open up one door and find 10 more rooms. It just, it's unending.
Just so you know, I'm stealing that say not to.
Yeah.
And Stephen Atkins,
I said it in my debate once.
Stephen Atkins, Stephen Atkins said say not 114. Right.
Right,
So
right.
notice
Yeah.
in my mind those are two separate videos right there. Say not to, say not 114.
Yeah.
Make those both. And will I give credit? No, I'll just do it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a psychopath.
And that happens all the time.
I do that all the time. I
Just
steal
so you know.
Anthony's stuff. Matter of fact, earlier when he was talking about my series on the psychology of Islam, I got that from him. I got that idea from him, right? I was familiar with Paul Vitz making certain claims about atheists. It was Anthony who points out that there's a little section at the very end of his book where he talks about how this psychology would have expressed itself before modern atheism and so on. So I built an entire series off of something he points out. I steal all of Sam Shamoun's stuff, right? He says he says it, but he's such a loser that and he blocks everyone, so no one pays any attention to him. But then I steal the stuff and I make it popular, and everyone says, "Oh, David, you're so brilliant, you're so smart with all this stuff."
When I was saying, I wasn't confirming your comment about Sam. I was saying, what I was going to say is...
No, you confirmed it. I said, what did I say? I said he's a loser or something? You said, yeah. You heard it, Sam. You see this backstabber here? He's going after you, man. I try to stick up for you, and look at what he does.
No, what I was going to say is...
With friends like this.
So you're acknowledging that this idea, that I had this, but let's be fair here. I had this idea, but I also, along with that, thought the perfect person to do this is David.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I've got to tell David about this, because David will take this and turn this into an incredible video. Mm-hmm. And I think I mention this to you almost every time I see you, how I'm still a little, the video did well, but compared to some other videos, I constantly look at this and I think, everybody has to go watch this series, because this series really does explain things.
And I never even finished the series. I didn't even get to Zainab and all that other stuff.
I think part of the reason is because it, it's
endless.
And it really should have had many more views. Mm-hmm. But I've seen other videos. I mean, I usually think the videos you do are good. I can't think of a video I didn't like. But content-wise, that some topics are more important than others, right? And I've looked at some topics and I thought, that's a relevant thing for some, contemporary news story or whatever. But I look at this and I think this explains so much of what happens in what becomes Islam.
Yeah, it's what has it got? Part 1 had 134,000. So yeah, but you're right. If I put that together, if I could cram all of it into a single video and really get everything in there, I think that's a million. Because guys, we talk about Muhammad basically taking everything that was around him and rolling it up into a ball, and that becoming Islam, right? He takes certain elements from heretical Christian groups that were there. He takes certain things from Jews. Can't tell the difference between, the Torah and other sources that the Jews are quoting. You can't tell the difference. He takes stuff from the pagans. He takes stuff from the polytheists. He takes stuff from the Persians. He takes stuff from everyone around him, rolls it up into a ball, and you get Islam. But there was something missing, and the something missing was what is the site, what's going on in his mind, because he doesn't take everything.
Yeah.
He takes certain things. What is the selection process? And once you combine that with understanding this guy's psychology, now you understand it perfectly. You understand all of Islam. So all of Islam just falls into a place. Makes perfect sense.
It's kind of like the news, right? The news can't report everything.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to choose what they're going to report.
Mm-hmm.
What is their principle of selection? What is it that determines? And that's where people make the observation about this being this kind of a news station or that kind of a news station, right? You can expect them to ignore these sorts of stories and highlight these stories. And that's because these people have certain beliefs. They have certain priorities. And those things factor into what ultimately ends up becoming the news. And it's the same thing with what ends up becoming Islam. Muhammad has a principle of selection. He has things going on here that help him determine what he's going to push out of his religion and include into it. And ultimately, it's that psychological stuff that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm. A couple things. One, Stephen Atkins said he doesn't even want any credit. That's cool. See, that's how you're supposed to be, right? That's how you're supposed to be. Not
You brought it up.
Not greedy for credit. So when I say not 114,
yeah,
that's cool. Angelo Toro said, "Do you know being God and interceding are way different?" Yeah, we know that. We're saying that the kind of interceding that they're talking about is paganism in Islam, right? These birds that are appearing, you have the same thing, right? You have the he does the same thing to a much greater extent. So he says that's paganism, that's idolatry, that's polytheism. Don't do that. Do it here, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're talking about, right?
So let's remember a couple of things, because he's coming into this midstream. He doesn't know all the stuff that we said before that. Now, he should know if he's a Muslim and he's defending Islam. I don't know who said that. But if that's the case, he should already know from the Quran that Muhammad said the pagans believed in Allah as the chief deity, subordinate to him as either creatures or offspring, but still subordinate, definitely dependent upon Allah, are these other deities who have the power of intercession with him. That's what Muhammad rejects as paganism. But then he comes along and says there's a being other than Allah, namely the Quran, that has attributes of deity like eternality, immutability, and so forth. That's the Orthodox Islamic teaching ever since the days of men like Ahmed bin Hanbal, ever since the time of the traditionists or the Asharis or the Maturidis. This is Orthodox Islam. If you're a Sunni Muslim, you believe in the eternality of the Quran. And so you believe it has an attribute of deity, an attribute that's supposedly exclusively divine. It only belongs to deity. And yet you say this attribute is possessed by the Quran. So you believe in another deity by definition, and you ascribe intercessory power to that deity. That's what Muhammad condemned the pagans for. So this is a pagan belief according to the Islamic sources. You can say being an intercessor means something other than deity, but it's irrelevant when it comes to what Muhammad's claiming and what he says that is when it comes to the pagans, right? Muhammad identified it as paganism. He identified it as polytheism and as shirk, but then he introduced it as under the guise of his religion, right? In his religion, you can do that, but it's got to be, in his form, right?
There's a comment here from Diva Girl Love. It says, Islam, mercy to go to heaven. Christianity, killing scarification in order to go to heaven. Nice. Lol. So apparently she's talking about Jesus dying for sins, which... gosh, you had a sacrificial system in the she's been complaining about sacrifice, right?
Oh,
you had a sacrificial system in the Old Testament, which your God affirms as the word of God. You just mocked it. Jesus laying down his life is affirmed in the gospel, which is also affirmed as the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God by your God, which you just mocked. So you just doubly mocked your God. But apart from that, you just said, Allah just shows mercy. Even if that were true, that would mean that your God is not perfect, right? If he's showing mercy, then he's not showing justice, right? If he's showing mercy, he's not showing justice. He could say, "Hey, no, you killed all those people. I'm going to let you into heaven." Well, that would be mercy, but it's not justice, right? This person did something, right? So it wouldn't be just. But apart from that, you're contradicting your prophet. Muhammad didn't say, "Hey, everyone who's done these horrible things can just make it into heaven." Your prophet in Sahih Muslim and 110 Ahadith Qudsi said that if you're a Muslim and you had a lot of sins and Allah, can't just let those sins slide, he's going to take your sins and make Jews and Christians pay for those sins, the sins of the Muslim, in hellfire. So he doesn't just show mercy. I mean, you could say that's mercy. You could say, Allah is showing mercy to the Muslim by taking the sins of the Muslim and putting them on the backs of Jews and Christians so that Jews and Christians then pay for them. But the idea is someone has to pay for them, right? Someone has to pay for them. So the real difference between Islam and Christianity here is in Christianity, Jesus says, I'll pay for those. I'll pay for those. He does it willingly. In Islam, Allah just orders the angels to put your sins, Diva Girl Love, on me and Tony here. And we didn't sign up for that, right? So that's the difference. So, I mean, you're either ignorant, you either don't know what you're talking about, you don't know your own religion, or you do know about your religion and you're lying. So much like your God, you're either ignorant or deceptive, right? If you want to take the better route in Islam, just say you're being deceptive, right? Because that's what Allah does.
Yeah, you're either learning like Allah, or you're
deceptive like Allah. All right. We should be wrapping up here in the next 8 minutes or so because we have recordings to do. So, what do you want to do? You want to take another question or two?
Yeah.
Wait, did you have anything else, or are we good on that?
Well, in the videos, they're going to get this argument made in a very tight way. I'll make sure all the sources are in there. I'll include the comments from Yasser Qadi and so forth. So I think we've done a sufficient job just sort of broaching that argument and getting people kind of acquainted with it. So we can take a couple questions or what have you.
All right, so we go. Here's one from a guy who was really trying to get attention for a while. I am Muslim. Do you guys need to mock Islam to preach the gospel or to baptize? You hate us so much, but Jesus said, "Love your enemy." Dude, we're mocking Islam because we love you, right? Because you need to hear this, right? You're not hearing the truth about your fake prophet from your religious leaders. You're not hearing it from your parents. You're not going to hear it from politicians. You're not going to hear it from journalists. You're not going to hear it from You're not going to hear it from Hollywood. You're not going to hear it from the education system. The only place you're going to hear about how pagan your religion is from us. And when we do it, you say, "Oh, you hate us for telling us the truth." Right? Muhammad, our prophet, he came along and said, "Oh, if you have these birds interceding for you, that's paganism. Now believe in these bird chapters of the Quran who are interceding for you." No one points it out to you. No one points it out. No one points out to you how you have deified the Quran, which is distinct from Allah. No one points this out to you. We point it out to you so you can actually make an informed decision. And you go, "I can't believe you hate us so much. You hate us for telling us the truth." So what? So just go ahead. Let's go ahead and flesh that out. To tell you the truth is hatred. What does that suggest? That to love you would be lying to you, right? So the people who lie to you all the time, namely your religious leaders, like your people like Zakir Naik and so on, they're the ones who love you by lying to you. And of course, you worship the God who brags about being the best of deceivers. To lie to you is to love you, and to tell you the truth is to hate you. So guys, do you see what this religion does? Do you see how it just absolutely flips morality on its head? This is some weird stuff, but I do like what you pointed out here. Check this out. I'm Muslim. Do you guys need to mock Islam to preach the gospel? No, we could preach the gospel without mocking Islam, but in order to show that Islam is false, we do mock it. Or to baptize. You hate us so much. No, we don't. We love you. And that's why we're sitting here night after night. No matter how dumb your objections are, we still just continue trying to tell you the truth. But Jesus said, "Love your enemy." Well, that's interesting, because in saying that, you've just noticed he acknowledges that Jesus said, love your enemy, right? So Jesus, whom you regard as a prophet, ordered people to love their enemies. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Jesus say, when he said that, didn't he say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven? Didn't he say that?
Did.
So in other words, you are trying to be more like God, who loves even your enemies, right? You're trying to be more like God, who loves even your enemies, right? So our Muslim friend just admitted that Jesus said that, right? He just admitted that Jesus, whom he regards as a prophet, said that God loves even my enemies, right? Now, why is this a problem? Well, if Jesus is a true prophet and speaks the truth, then he's just condemned Allah as a false god and Muhammad as a false prophet. Why? Well, we turn to the Quran and we find out that Allah does not love most people, the vast majority of people. Allah has no love for them. Let's go and read a couple passages. Allah does not love those who exceed the limits. Surah 2, verse 190. Anthony, have you exceeded limits in your life?
I got pulled over on the way down here.
So guess what? Almost all human beings exceed the limits, with the exception of Jesus. All human beings exceed the limits. So Allah doesn't love them. Allah does not love any ungrateful sinner. Surah 2, verse 276. Allah does not love the unbelievers. So non-Muslims, people who don't believe, Allah doesn't love them. Allah does not love the unbelievers. Surah 3, verse 32. Allah does not love the unjust. Surah 3, verse 57. Allah does not love him who is proud or boastful. Surah 4, verse 36. Allah does not love the extravagant. Surah 7, verse 31. Allah does not love the treacherous. Surah 8, verse 58. Allah does not love the mischief makers. Surah 28, verse 77. Allah does not love any arrogant boaster. Surah 57, verse 23. So Allah doesn't love his enemies. He doesn't love your enemy. Allah doesn't love most people. But our Muslim friend just admitted that the God of Jesus does love all these people. He does. And therefore, the God of Jesus is not the God of the Quran. And therefore, the God of the Quran is a false God. And Muhammad's a false prophet. Y'all catch that? Because notice, you can't say, well, maybe Jesus was wrong. A Muslim can't say, well, maybe Jesus is wrong, right? Now you might say, well, maybe the sources about Jesus saying that were corrupted. Well, he already admitted that Jesus said that, but Muslims can't even say that, because the Muslim sources, the Quran and the Hadith, affirm the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of the scriptures that Christians have. The scriptures that we have and we still possess. There's no way around this, guys. There's no way around this, right? By affirming Jesus, Islam self-destructs, because Jesus contradicts Islam over and over and over again like a beating drum. That's about it. Any final words, Anthony?
Yeah. Let me throw in a couple things. Number one, let's just set some of that aside for a second. Think about this. The Bible never makes any reference to Islam, to the religion of Muhammad, to his distinctive beliefs. There's a very good reason for that. It comes afterwards. But that means if somebody is right in saying that what we're doing is inconsistent with what Jesus did, we certainly don't have any direct statements of Jesus. We think we're making a legitimate use of what Jesus said in application to this situation. And we do see Jesus condemning other groups for teaching falsehood, right? And even mocking them. You want to see a scathing reply from Jesus to another religious faction? Just look at Matthew 23. In Matthew 23, Jesus over and over again has these words that are not only scathing, but dripping with sarcasm, satire. It's rich. And so it does show that at least, Jesus as a paradigm, we take him as a paradigm, we can in fact do this sort of thing. There's nothing inconsistent with Jesus and his teachings and what we're doing presently. In fact, Jesus was the master at it. If there's anything to be said, it's that we're falling short of Jesus' perfected use of these skills. But the fact is that the Bible never makes reference to Islam. But does Islam make reference to Christianity?
A lot.
Does Islam speak in exalted ways about Christianity, or does it denigrate Christianity? According to Muhammad, in fact, why is Muhammad run out of Mecca? Muhammad's run out of Mecca because Muhammad was making fun of their gods. So if this person thinks that it's wrong for one religious group or a religious individual to make fun of or mock or condemn the beliefs of other people, then he's condemning his own prophet by his own criteria, right? Because his prophet actually did, in fact, make fun of pagans, and he also made fun of Christianity. Only his criticism of Christianity don't really stick. They actually apply to Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not really sure. Oh, wait, there she's back. Did she say anything good?
Well, she's kind of making it too easy, right?
Oh, okay. So that's been dealt with a lot of times.
It's my goodness. It's, you know, we want to get off here and make our videos, but you know, if Diva Girl Love just says something weird and it kind of only applies to her, you know, that's terrible. But when she's saying the same kinds of things that Muslims say over and over again, and she makes it so easy to show the real, true spirit of Islam, you got to love that, right? So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. You've already seen it over in the chat. Diva Girl Love said, Jesus said in the Bible, bring my enemy and slay them before me. Lol, is that loving your enemy? Wow. Diva Girl Love, I've pointed this out to you before. When you hear from your apologists, Jesus said, and I've heard this from Ahmed Didat, right? I've heard it from Zakir Naik, that Jesus is commanding his followers, hey, you, my followers, bring my enemies here and slay them before me. What happens if we actually turn to the passage? We all know, people have already pointed out to you, Jesus is telling a story. Jesus is telling a story that starts in Luke chapter 19, verse 12. He said, therefore, a nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and then return. Calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 minas and said to them, engage in business until I come. But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, we do not want this man to reign over us. You can continue reading the passage. It's the ruler in this story. It's the nobleman in this story whose subjects rebel against him. It's the nobleman in the story who says, bring them here and slay them before me. What do your leaders say? What does Ahmed Didat say? He says, aha, this is Jesus. He leaves out the whole part about this being a story. And he says, this was Jesus. Look, it's Jesus saying this. Notice, you could do this, right? I could take Ahmed, I've got to do this in a video, right? I could take Ahmed Didat and do the same thing, right? When Ahmed Didat says, and Jesus said, as for my enemies, bring them and slay them before me. I can cut out that little part of Ahmed Didat and then say, you see, Ahmed Didat ordered people to bring his enemies before him and slay them. What an evil, sick person. Right? Anyone can do this. The fact that your religious leaders and your great apologists do this, completely massacre the context and do so deliberately, that should tell you something. But I've already said this to you. No matter how many times they lie to you, and they're lying to you about Jesus, they're lying to you about God, they're lying to you about Islam, they're lying to you about Christianity. No matter how many times they lie to you, you just keep believing anything they say mindlessly. And you have, I'm guessing you have the same kind of view that we just looked at, namely, the people who tell you the truth, they hate you. The people who lie to you, they love you. Because Islam has, by some stretch of the imagination, Islam has compelled you to think like that. And you should be thinking, wait a minute, what kind of true religion needs to be grounded in an endless supply of lies? What kind of true religion needs apologists who do nothing but lie about Islam and Muhammad and Jesus and the Bible? What kind of religion needs those kinds of lies? That's what all of this should do. But for some reason, no matter how many times it's pointed out, you just keep believing anything they say. This is wild stuff. What do you think about that?
I think you said it all on that. I mean, that's the issue they keep bringing up. I mean, it's not only a parable, and it's not only an illustration that Jesus is, making, but using another figure, not himself. But to either way, it's referring to the final judgment. Nobody disagrees that at the final judgment, God's going to bring everybody to an account.
Yeah,
right?
Muslims say it's command to us. It's command to
Yeah.
Jesus commanding his followers, which no one has ever claimed, right? Except Muslims. Muslims are the ones who claim this, right? That this is Jesus telling his followers. Why? Because they know that we look at the Muslim sources, and Allah calls for the violent subjugation of the entire world. He orders his followers to go and kill people for not converting. He orders his followers to violently subjugate Jews and Christians and to kill them if they refuse to pay the jizya and refuse to convert. And we point out this violence, we point out the terrorism, we point out this origin of all the violence we see around us. And they don't like everyone pointing at them going, oh, look at this violence. And so what do? They lie. They lie. They lie and say, but Jesus did the same thing. Jesus, he ordered his followers to bring people before him and kill him. Wait, where did it happen? So according to you, he's talking to who? He's talking to Peter and James and John and saying, bring my enemies here and slay them before me. Did they do that? Do you recall that in the Bible? Did Peter and James and John say, oh, let's go get these guys? Jesus said, kill them. Gosh, they didn't interpret it like that. Why? They heard Jesus telling a story.
Yeah, and actually, the only thing that even comes close to that, it's a single instance, is when Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. Judas has gone off and he's told the chief priests how to get Jesus, and he'll lead the temple guards to him. They come, and then Peter, in defense of his master, which is a natural thing, he gets up and he pulls out his sword and he cuts off the ear of Malchus, one of the guards. But Jesus, he rebukes Peter, and then what does he do? He proceeds to heal the man, right? He does the opposite of have this man slain. He heals him. So not only has she misunderstood the parable, but if she just read the whole book, she'd see that the character of Jesus and his actions are the complete opposite of that sort of thing.
Wanted to address a couple comments real quick here in the super chat. Guys, if I didn't get to you in the super chat, I'm just not good at you. You saw what happens when I try to deal with equipment, right? It was a massive disaster, right? So when I see them, we'll look at them, but I often miss them. But Jason says, how does the no bearer of burden standard apply to the transfer of sins to Jews and Christians? Well, I actually have a video on this. It's titled something like, how could Jesus pay for the sins of others, or something like that. You might want to check that out, because what you find in this situation is that the Quran is inconsistent, right? The Quran says no bearer of burden, talking about a burden of sin here, no bearer of burden shall bear the burden of another. But the Quran and other places say they will carry their own burdens and other burdens besides their burdens, right? And it gives examples of this. Like if you lead other people astray, you will have to carry your own burden, and you will have to carry something of the other person's burden, the person you led astray, part of that person's burden. So the Quran is just inconsistent on this point. It acknowledges that there are some people who will bear the burdens of others. And basically the situation is there were people coming to Muhammad saying, Muhammad, you're saying Allah can just forgive me because I've recited the Shahada. Do you have any clue the horrible things I've done? And so Muhammad needed a kind of better explanation. And so, Allah's going to take your sins, that mountain of sins that you've committed, and he specifically talks about sins as heavy as a mountain. He's going to take those sins and he's going to put them on the backs of Jews and Christians. And so Jews and Christians are going to pay for your sins in hell. And so, that's the idea. And so that's how those things would fit together. But again, you can check out my video and I show how all these things tie together. Arlen says, David Wood, are you starting a GoFundMe for Anthony's equipment? Not right now. I mean, if I end up having the money, I'll just buy him. I'll just buy his stuff. But I actually know that a couple of us are going to be needing equipment this year for some of the things that we're doing. So I need another 1 or 2 cameras. Now, I mean, the camera I have now, I will use until it falls apart. I love this camera, but for some of the stuff we're doing where we need multiple camera angles and things like that, gonna have to get some equipment down the road. I'm having a problem with one of my 2 microphones, and so but Anthony is going to need a full setup. But people contribute to my channel and stuff like that. So if I might just have enough at some point. So I'll go ahead and grab the equipment. If not, then we will do some sort of GoFundMe or something like that. All right. Hang on. What is this? I'm looking at the other. There's some super chats there. So Say Brav said, be good. There's only one who's good. You like that? Why are you laughing at that? Snakehead 4 didn't say anything, but is in the super chat. Michael R. Burgess just said thank you, so that's cool. And all right, guys, we have to sign off now because we're making an entire video series here all about the various ways. What? Give them a quick rundown because this is going to be coming out.
Yeah, we're doing a video.
Not full rundown, short rundown.
Yeah, short rundown. So we're going to do a series on how Islam, contrary to its pretensions, is not an example of pure monotheism.
Mm-hmm.
Muhammad claimed to be introducing pure monotheism into Arabia, where the original monotheism had been corrupted. And in the course of trying to do away with that, he ends up really presenting us with an amalgamation of all kinds of pagan ideas. And so on the surface, I mean, you do have these statements where Allah says he's the only God, or where he condemns belief in other gods. But once you start looking just a little bit underneath the surface, you start to see, no, it's the same old paganism. It's kind of like, you know what it reminds me of? I'm going to use this in my video. Get ready to expect to hear this. It's kind of like Jacob, right? He wants to marry Rachel, but he wakes up in the morning and discovers it's Leah.
Oops,
right?
wrong girl.
So Muhammad, he thinks that what he's doing is delivering pure monotheism. He pretends that's what he's doing. But when you take the covers off, you realize, hey, this is the uncomely one. It's not that pretty one that I had my eyes on. It's this other thing. And so Muhammad ends up bringing paganism into Arabia under the guise of monotheism, but it's anything but that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how he does that. I'm going to show how he violates Tawheed over and over and over again, and how he does it in ways that he's otherwise already condemned, right? He condemns the idea of another eternal reality other than Allah, and then he says the Quran is eternal. He condemns the idea of a multiplicity of things in addition to his deity, and yet all of Allah's attributes are said to be eternal, and not Allah. I don't think people really grasp this. They don't understand that according to Muslims, Orthodox Islam, his attributes are something distinct from his essence, just as much as Allah is distinct from the Quran. So Allah has all sorts of attributes that are viewed as eternal and other than him. And yet Muslims claim to be pure monotheists. These attributes are viewed as independent in some sense, right? We didn't even touch on how his attributes actually conflict with one another. So these are, remember...
His mercy triumphs over his wrath.
Yeah, remember what Muhammad said in opposition to paganism? He said, if there were other gods, then there'd be no unity in the world because they'd be warring with each other, right? Well, here you have Allah's eternal attributes at odds with one another. His mercy triumphing over his wrath. In Christianity, God's mercy doesn't triumph over his wrath. God is both just and merciful. He's both just and the justifier of those who have faith in Jesus, precisely because he poured out his wrath upon Christ as our substitute, and by means of him then is able to pour out mercy upon us. His attributes are perfectly honored and intact and so forth. So anyways, what I'm going to do is just show that this sort of thing happens over and over again in more ways than you can even imagine, and in more ways than Muslims want to admit.
Yeah, and just to tie what we're talking about right here together with what we're talking about yesterday. So the Quran inescapably is associated as a partner with Allah, right? And so Allah has an eternal partner, the Quran, which you can swear by because it's uncreated and it's Allah's eternal partner. And so you can swear by it when, according to Muhammad, if you swear by anything other than Allah, you've associated as a partner with him. So just to recap, the Quran is indisputably, according to Islam, a partner with Allah, right?
Yes.
So there are two. And yet, in terms of the intercessors, there's one greater there's one greater than even the Quran, who appears as a pale man, and that's Muhammad. He's even greater than Allah's eternal speech, right? Now think about this. If the Quran is a partner with Allah, an eternal partner, his eternal speech, and Muhammad is even greater than one of Islam's two deities, what does this mean?
Muslims have deified a man. They've gone to an excess in their religion. One of the things they illicitly, wrongly accuse Christians of.
All right. So anyway, that is some of the stuff that's coming up in Anthony's videos.
By the way, in light of what you were saying when we were talking about the Quran and how it's an intercessor and talking about how the Quran's chapters will appear like flocks of birds, which clearly is analogous to the exalted or high-flying cranes, the pagan deities that fly up to Allah, just reminded me of how much more we are rightly or justified in saying that Islam is for the birds.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You can put that in the
look at
video
this.
if you
Look
like.
at this. No matter how many times. Diva Girl Love says, does God the Father have attributes? Does God the Father has attributes? Does he?
Yes.
Yes. See,
Yes.
keep in mind, right? Diva Girl Love. We believe that God can be one in one way, more than one in another way, right? So we believe that God can be one in essence, nature, being, and more than one in attribute. We believe that God can be one in one way, essence or nature of being, and be more than one in person. We believe that God can be one in one way, more than one in another way, right? We believe that. You say, no, God can't do that. He can't be that way. He can't be one in one way and more than one in another way. If you say that God is more than one in some way, then you've just split him into all these different deities. Oh, all we're doing is holding you to that, right? You're the ones telling us that, right? So, but if you were missing what Anthony said, the only way to even attempt to reconcile the Islamic claim that the Quran has these attributes of God and yet is distinct from God is to say that, that the Quran has the attributes of God in the sense of that it's eternal and things like that. The only way to try and make sense of monotheism out of that is to say that the Quran is one of Allah's attributes. It's his speech, right? Well, if the Quran is distinct from Allah and it's always with Allah and it's some sort of separate thing and it appears as a person distinct from Allah, which it will at the judgment according to Muhammad, if the Quran appears as a person and it's an attribute, then
it's separate.
It's separate. And guess what? You have all these other attributes, right? And the other attributes are in conflict with each other. Allah's mercy is saying, no, forgive. And Allah's wrath is saying, no, punish. These are Allah's attributes. His attributes are calling for other things, and one is triumphing over another. Well, based on what you tell us about Allah's speech, Allah's attributes are all these separate things. They're distinct from Allah, right? So wait a minute. So now you've got all these different deities, and you can't say, oh, they're all just the one Allah, because then you're saying God is one in one way, more than one in another way, right? How are you not getting this? Everything Islam says about Christianity, everything Islam says about pagan religions, everything Islam says, every accusation you're pointing out against all these other religions is all these things apply to Islam in a far greater extent. And you don't get it because your leaders do everything in their power to keep you in a state of ignorance. And we're here to undo what they've done. We understand how much work that is going to be because you can say the same things over and over and over again and not get what we're saying. But we know that because you are created in the image of God, you are capable on some level of grasping this. And so we're going to keep pointing it out. We're going to keep pointing it out because, again, you're not hearing this from your leaders. You're not going to hear it from your parents. You're not going to hear it from any of your Muslim friends. You're not going to hear it from anyone else. You're going to hear it from us. And you keep coming back, so you are going to hear it. All right? We all done?
We are done.
All right. Shout out to Islam Critiques. Everyone subscribe.
I just saw that.
Yep, everyone subscribe to Islam. Weren't you watching a video earlier at the gym?
So Islam Critique, we were at the gym and I had to go over to David and I said, hey.
He started laughing.
Yeah. I was laughing on hitting the weights. So
because he used Muhammad Hijab's clip where Hijab
took another jab at hijab.
Allah doesn't pray to Muhammad, he prays for Muhammad. And Muslims cheer, yay! All our God prays for Muhammad.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't realize
But that was
it's
a
so
small,
amazing.
small snippet in a much longer point that he was making. So everybody should go watch that.
Gotta love a religion that is pagan in every possible way, and whose leaders can even stand on stage and admit how pagan it is, and they will still cheer for the pure monotheism. What a religion. What a religion. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. I will be, for those of you who are here like live streams, I believe I'll be on the Apostate Prophets channel tomorrow. So if you're not subscribed to the Apostate Prophet, go to his channel. I think I'm supposed to be on there at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So check that out. And I believe I'll be on with Robert Spencer sometime next week on my channel. So, all right. See you all then. Oh, wait. How many lights do you see?
Huh?
There are 4 lights. I could do that much louder, but I think my baby just went to sleep. There are 4 lights.
What lights? What are they
It's a
referring
Star
to?
Trek reference, I'm assuming.
Oh.
All right. Catch you later.